I understand there's some controversy brewing about how many subscribers
I'm aware too.
Sorry about
you have more subscribers than anybody.
I was
it's probably the biggest, largest
this liberation
YouTube
of Kyiv,
subscription
so everybody
that anybody's had.
moving out of Kyiv,
but also,
had a lot of
it's not numbers that matter, Nick. And I know everyone's going to quibble over this, but it's content.
You know what?
It's
I'm also
quality.
aware that major combat
and your subscribers are amazing. They're great.
I know your
They're
availability
high-quality
is,
subscribers, and that's really what you have to look at. Don't just focus on the numbers.
In the world,
I mean, if people are spewing a bunch of fake news, just don't get in the mud. They're amazing folks. Their engagement, the way that they like the videos.
So, everything we do is based...
I hope this puts this to the end. I hope that this controversy is over and we know who the real YouTube subscriber champ is. And it's you, Nick.
Hello, welcome everyone to Overtime. Yeah, the mics here are just screwed up, and I was telling Captain Obvious that, and that literally is, look, it's not, I'm not making it up. I was telling him that aside from the fact that we did miss him, and I genuinely miss it when we don't get a chance to chat, because I enjoy talking with him. But all that notwithstanding, too, we're gonna, when the war's over, we're gonna do a video. It's gonna be playtime. We're gonna have a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So, but until then, thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to In Time. We have with us today Captain Obvious and Commander Lance McMillan. Gentlemen, how is everyone today?
Well, everything is very, very obvious to me, I think.
All right.
Obviously.
Of course. So, before we begin, a couple of quick notes. Not tomorrow. Next week, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have on Mr. Scott Kelly Ernest. He is a former white nationalist, former extremist, spent a lot of time in extremist groups, in his own words. His job was to foment hate, and he was very good at it. We're going to have him on. He has left those groups and now speaks actively on why such groups are dangerous. He has a consulting firm and routinely is he's specifically an anti-extremist consultant, how to deal with extremists and how these groups operate. So from the inside, we will be having an interview. He's been very good about being candid and being willing to be candid on our air. So I think that's going to be a very good show on Tuesday. That will be on In Time. Speaking of, that will be on In Time. For those of you who don't know, and I know that that's probably an increasingly fewer amount of people, we are separating the channel. So interviews and content that's maybe a bit more evergreen, but isn't necessarily, present, current, modern day events, that's going to be all on Overtime. So that's going to be philosophy discussions on education, discussions on anything that that isn't necessarily happening exactly right now. That's going to be on overtime. In time is breaking news, talking about politics, talking about the war in Ukraine, anything that's present. Right now, we are simulcasting to in time and overtime. The reason for this is simple. We need to get overtime to 1,000 subs. We need to get it to 1,000 subs as quickly as possible. If you want to continue watching Starsky on future shows, and he's great. He sends you guys the links so you can always find him. Right now, we've been giving the links to overtime. We need to get that channel to 1,000 subs so that we can use the community tab. We can be monetized and do everything with it that we can on in time. Until then, we're just hobbled. And until then, you have to see that really annoying restream bot. I apologize. We're very close. I'm hoping it's no more than a week or two. But like, subscribe, share, and please subscribe to Overtime. It really helps us out. Once we hit 1,000, these simulcasts are going to end for the most part, with the exception of big news, like, say, somebody indicts a former president of the United States. So all that said, thank you all for joining us. And all super chats are going to the Vatra volunteer organization. That was at the organization of Starsky's Choice. However, because Overtime doesn't have 1,000 subs, you actually do have to go to In Time to do it. The link to In Time is in the description. I'll also pin it in the, can I pin comments? I don't think I can pin comments in Overtime because I may be able to. I don't know. It's limited until we get 1,000 subs. I'll work on it. Operator, you did give us, or sorry, Captain, you did give us a video. We've got that queued up anytime you want to see that. I think that's interesting. But until then, could you tell us what's been going on in the last week in Ukraine?
Yes, there were a bunch of Russian missile strikes. The most recent one happened in Kharkiv. Also, the city was hit by kamikaze drones launched by Russians. One of the strikes, one of the most massive strikes in my area, in the area of Kyiv, happened just a couple of days ago. Russians launched their Iranian-Russian kamikaze drones, and we were shooting them down. I believe that Nick has a video of that.
All right, let's take a look.
I can say that one flew almost over my house here, my bunker, and we tried to intercept it. Unfortunately, it crashed into a store in Kyiv, in Svetoshin district. Luckily, nobody got killed. So I think 15 or 16 were launched, and 14 or 15 were intercepted. Unfortunately, one was not like it reached its target, but at least it brought some devastation. Also, these days we are celebrating the liberation of Kyiv, liberation of places like Bucha and Irpin. I believe that our president today visited Bucha and brought flowers to the place where our civilians were buried by Russian invaders. And it's a very special day to me as well, because I just met volunteers from Leaf 99. Those are Ukrainian, Estonian, and international volunteers who already delivered more than 10 cars to my unit. and we met them here at the airport of Hostomel. It was very nice. It was very nice to see people who also watched some of my videos. Very interesting questions were asked regarding that battle that took place there 1 year ago. So we had some flashbacks there today. I just met them like 1 hour ago. Always nice to see people from abroad who come to Ukraine, who communicate with you time to time through internet. Always nice to see them offline. Hopefully in the future there will be more occasions like that.
That actually reminds me, and I was going to mention this earlier, but we just got a little sidetracked behind schedule, so I apologize. What we are planning, and I'll discuss it with you after the show if you have time, or at some point soon. But and we've talked with the shills, and we're talking with a few other content creators. I've dropped in the live chat. Oh no, I didn't drop that in the live chat. I dropped that. Somebody's going to wonder why they're getting that as a private message. Crisisrelief.un.org. So it is a United Nations crisis relief fund. It deals exclusively with refugees, emphasizes children. We've dropped a link to this fund. We are going to do a fundraiser for that fund. Godless Granny has made a Ukrainian flag, and it's really nice. I think it's about 7 feet by, I forget. We'll talk about it more, but I think on a Saturday coming up, we're hoping to do a 4 or 5 hour stream, get you a few other content creators on. All super chats from that stream will go to the UN Crisis Relief Fund, and the highest super chat will be getting the flag donated by Godless Granny. So we're working on a few other things, so that'll be coming up. If you just make sure you keep in touch with the channel, hit the bell, you'll get notified about that, or go to our Discord because we're going to be talking about that soon. But that's something I think we're very proud of. So at some point, let's you and I see if we can connect and talk about it, and see if that's something that you can fit into your schedule.
Great.
So what else has been going on?
Not much, actually. We are expecting one very democratic, very friendly, the key word is democratic country, to chief the Security Council of the United Nations exactly on the April Fool's Day. And I'm talking about the Terrorist Federation, because according to the rules, they will be chiefing the Security Council of the United Nations, which sounds already like an April Fool's joke. Yeah, but we were laughing at it today with our officers, because it's a complete, it's a bullshit. I mean, oh my God, it's like
that's the appropriate response. That's lost for words.
We don't.
Yeah.
I think we don't need Security Council of the United Nations at all, because they don't work. That they just don't.
Let's talk about that briefly. I agree that the Security Council is extraordinarily ineffective. The biggest reason for this is because of the veto power of any of the founding members of that Security Council. I believe that veto power should be removed for all those countries, including the U.S. Hey, I'd love the U.S. to keep it. I really would. But you can't expect other countries to give it up if the U.S. doesn't. The U.S. will never give it up. The other countries won't give it up. So I don't know how you salvage that problem. There's been talk of stripping Russia from their veto power on the council, because it's made the council unable to do anything when it comes to Ukraine. Having said that, you can't strip them from it, with the exception of one thing, which is they have it because they're a founding member. If they eventually lost it somehow, they would not be able to get it back. The only way they could lose it is if they were ejected from the UN, which has been talked about on occasion. Commander, do you think there's any possibility that they're going to be ejected from the UN? And if so, what the hell bar has to be hurdled for that to happen? You're muted.
That's a no. I'm up.
Oh, you were thinking.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not sure of exactly what the process is. It's just, I think to make it happen, you have to get, like a 2/3 majority of the council to say, we're done with you. Bye-bye. Apply next week when you're feeling better. um, it's not something I think that the founding members of the UN ever really gave serious consideration to, of how you get somebody off the Security Council, or more to the point, how you expel them from the body entirely. And the Security Council issue, I think, is probably more appropriate than just entirely expelling them from the UN. The issue there is, why do certain countries have permanent seats on the UN Security Council with veto power and others don't? It used to be very easily defined that was, I have nuclear weapons, ergo I get a seat on the Security Council with veto power. But that no longer holds true, because there are countries with nuclear weapons that don't have a seat on the Security Council or veto power. So it's a different step, and it's either that you have so much power or you have so much respect that you can get into that position. I think the last time anybody was admitted as a permanent council member or Security Council member, probably back in the late 50s or early 60s. And I think the world has changed significantly since that occurred. So I don't see that really happening again. This is a case of the UN not really evolving over the course of time, and I think that's a problem with any bureaucracy. Once it gets established, it's very difficult to change how the bureaucracy works, the rules that govern its procedures, and I think that's where we are with the UN right now. It still certainly has relevance, but the structure of it has failed to evolve with the world post World War II, when it was established, to a modern post Cold War world that we have today. So I think it's less a question of whether we boot Russia as to whether or not we actually reform the rules for the UN in general, and specifically for the Security Council, to reflect the realities of the modern day.
Captain, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts is that it's absolutely crazy, because imagine, for example, Russian paratroopers landing in Ireland, okay, and they start occupying cities. They do all kinds of massacre you can imagine, or I don't know, and they're still there, even though they invaded, even though they do all kinds of crazy shit, but the UN simply cannot do anything about it. I think they're useless. My opinion is that they're completely useless, because they cannot follow the modern events. They're not adapted to modern situation, to do their functions in the modern society. Therefore, we don't need them. Of course, we need organization that has to manage everything dedicated to global security. We need to cooperate with other countries. Of course, it's very is the most stupid idea we can imagine is living in a country that has no ties to other countries. We need organizations like that, but we don't need Security Council of the United Nations as they are now, you know.
Yeah. I mean, when the situation has devolved to the point where the UN is kind of almost the same kind of irrelevant organization that the League of Nations was. And if you remember the historical precedent when Italy invaded Ethiopia, and the League of Nations, very similar to what's going on with Russia and Ukraine right now, everybody sat around wringing their hands about, oh, how terrible this is. But nobody would stand up and say, hey, we as the League need to do something to stop this horrific crime. And that's exactly where we are today, is we have an obvious horrific crime going on, and everybody's, you know, wringing their hands and talking about it, but nobody's actually doing anything within the UN. And so what's happened is that power vacuum of, you know, on the international stage of trying to maintain peace around the globe. Instead, you have an organization like NATO that's having to step up to the plate and try to at least semi-rectify the situation by providing support to the Ukrainians.
And not just NATO, European Union. From what I remember, I can say that in the very beginning of this war, the biggest help, the biggest support that came to Ukraine, it was brought by the European Union, which is not a military organization whatsoever. Yeah. And they were so dedicated to this. So then NATO stepped up, but the United Nations, the Security Council of the United Nations is useless. It's a useless organization completely.
Yeah, agree.
All right. A disappointing assessment, but I think an accurate one. So, gentlemen, we've heard that Chechnya, Kazakhstan, there's been rumblings of Russian troops getting ambushed there and attacks going on. Do either of you have any insight as to what's going on and what, if anything, is the significance of
it? Commander?
Oh, okay. I think what's happening is pretty obvious. It's the Russian sphere of influence has weakened because all their focus is now directed at Ukraine. And so they're not able to maintain the gravitas, the power, the influence they had in regions surrounding their empire. Let's be honest, that's what it is. So as those control bonds weaken, you have all of these countries that have feuds and squabbles with one another. You have all sorts of ethnic minorities that are seeking more autonomy for themselves, and they're all starting to squabble. And previously, you had Russia in a position where if the Georgians and the Abkhazians got a dispute, the Russians would decide, you know, here's how the war is going to not happen, and we're going to award this to so-and-so, and we're going to send in our own forces to garrison these areas to maintain peace. That's not happening anymore because Russia can't devote the attention, the resources, the personnel to enforcing that peace. And so it's descending into chaos. I think before the year is out, we're probably going to see a renewal of the Armenian Abkhazian war. We probably will see the Georgians get involved somewhere in there. I think the whole area is going to just kind of explode.
I can confirm that in Chechnya, for example, there are different groups, different, they call them, not like, tape, yeah? So there are different tapes and different clans, and they all fight versus each other for power. So I think that soon we will see exactly just that, different, and it's not just about Chechnya, it's about other Caucasian regions as well. I think that soon we will see more escalation in those areas because of that, because Russia at this point concentrated all its efforts around Ukraine, around this invasion, mobilization, and things like that.
Yeah, and I think Chechnya is an excellent case in point, because you had the Kadyrov forces that were in power and maintaining power, and then he sent them to the front to fight, and they got mauled pretty badly. And so those security forces weren't back in Chechnya to maintain control and order. So the opposition groups are rising back up again. So he's being withdrawn from the front, probably to get sent back to his home to maintain order. And that leaves a hole at the front, which now has to be filled in with more Mobics who don't know what they're doing. And the chaos is spiraling out of control for Russia at this point.
Yeah, and relations between those groups in Chechnya, for example, they are very, very difficult to understand. Back in my days, I think around 2005, 2006, I met some very, very nice friend from Chechnya, and he was a really funny guy, actually, and he told me, like, if you have a Chechen friend, you have the best friend you can imagine ever. But if you have two Chechen friends, you better kill one of us.
Oh.
Yeah.
I want to get back to this. I don't mean to leave it, but I just saw a question in the live chat from Godless Granny that I had missed. And again, she's the one who made the donations. So, and that's, we wouldn't be doing the stream if it wasn't for that. It was basically her idea. So, but she asked, could they get booted from the Security Council for war crimes? And I'll answer that really quick and then get back to this, but it's worth answering, which is that A, to the best of my knowledge, there's no such mechanism. B, even if there was, the problem is it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to convict them of war crimes. Presumably, it's if Putin is convicted as opposed to the country, but Putin can't be convicted in absentia. And I don't think he's planning any trips to The Hague or any places that are going to arrest him and extradite him anytime soon. So I think those we've discussed them before, and it's in a previous episode. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think the indictments against him and the head of Children's Services in Russia is extraordinarily important, but not because they're likely to see any time in jail. I don't think so. But speaking of Putin and consequences for this, and Starsky, I'll start with you. It seems to me now, I've seen a little Russian television, and it may surprise you to learn, Starsky, that they are winning the war, that they're winning the war spectacularly. Ukraine is on its heels and is going to fall any day now, and that this war was a brilliant idea by the brilliant strategist Vladimir Putin. That notwithstanding, I've got some reason to suspect those reports coming out of Russian state television. Finland has just been approved to enter NATO by Turkey. That means every member state of NATO has approved Finland entering NATO. That strikes me as catastrophic in terms of what one of the original goals ostensibly was, which was to keep NATO from expanding along Russia's borders. Between that and now we know that it looks like tensions are going to start flaring up in other sort of satellite states or in the sphere of influence that may wish to leave, and Russia doesn't appear at this point to be able to do anything about it. So my first question to both of you, I'll start with Starsky, is how long is Putin going to hold out before either he has to leave or he finds a unfriendly window and dies of deceleration poisoning?
It's gonna take a while. Unfortunately, Putin wants power. Putin wants to hold up to his power, and he doesn't want to lose it. As for Finland and bordering countries that became NATO members, like it's so funny, you know, when supporters of the Russian terrorism say that Russia only attacked because NATO broke its promise not to expand. Why does NATO expand? Like, what's the reason for, like, which countries were annexed by NATO and forced to join it? I mean, like the reason they join NATO is because of freaking Russia, and
Yeah.
Another side to this is that because Russia attacked Ukraine, that let's say wanted to join NATO, even though it wasn't true back then. So it means that Russia can easily invade all other countries that are not NATO at this point. That's logic. But regarding Finland, I think that if Russia had its resources to continue their hybrid warfare, and I think that they still have those resources, not as much as previously, but they still do. I think that Finland can expect this hybrid warfare starting on its territory anytime soon, probably, as different interesting parties or movements appearing, different civilian unrest here and there, that all can be expected there. On the other hand, though, Finland is not a huge country, is not as big as Ukraine, and people inside small countries, they are more or less united, and Russian goal would be to destroy this unity inside their country. I think that can be expected easily.
Vander?
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to read one quick thing.
Please.
We were talking about this whole issue with the UN. So this is from the UN Charter. A member of the United Nations, which has
Oh, you cut out there for a second. Oh, did we lose? Hold on a sec. Oh, I think we lost. Oh, I think we may have the commander back. Commander? There you
Commander,
are.
we have you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Weird.
Russians are tampering with this. They don't want to hear this. This is obviously going to be good.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, from the UN Charter.
Yeah.
A member of the United Nations which has persistently violated the principles contained in the present charter may be expelled from the organization by the General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council.
Here's the thing about that. Upon the recommendation.
That's right.
Not upon vote.
It's a catch-22.
Well, no.
And
I'm not sure it is. I'm sorry. Please continue, and then I'll tell you my objection.
No, it's a catch-22 because you cannot be expelled from the UN without a vote in favor of doing so from the Security Council.
I'm going to correct
you. Have a permanent seat on the Security Council. It's permanent.
Let me correct you. Could you read that again? Because it doesn't use the word vote. It uses the word recommendation. And the difference is, and the Security Council has made recommendations over the explicit objections of permanent members, but a recommendation only requires a majority vote and cannot be vetoed even by permanent members. They can only veto.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is when the Security Council recommends it, which doesn't
Correct.
require a unanimous vote or a non-vetoed vote, it just requires a recommendation, then the body itself can vote to expel, is what you're saying.
Correct. And then once they're expelled,
Okay.
if they're allowed back, they are not permanent members of the council anymore. But that is an interesting use of the language. But that is yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It can be done, and it's been proposed, but I don't see them going through it seriously yet. But they can be expelled. I don't know. I'm all
So
for it. I'm a
the
huge
question
fan
would
of that
then
idea.
be, how do you get the Security Council to make that recommendation?
That's a really good question. That would require someone who knows more about strategy than I do. So I'll get you and Titan together, and the two of you can tell me what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did have another question for you, Commander. So,
Sure.
with everything that's going on, we know that the Russian military budget, the Russians have lost 2/3 of their military budget as a result of the loss of oil revenue that they were expecting and of other sanctions. We know that they haven't been capable of replacing or rebuilding their advanced missiles, and in fact that they're building T-62s because those are the most advanced tanks they can build that do not have computer components that they cannot fabricate on their own anymore as a result of this. Between the economic problems that they are facing, between this war in Ukraine, and now what appears to be other satellite countries starting trouble, how long, if this continues, which we all hope it will, may not, as you pointed out, these things can get dicey and we don't always know, but assuming it continues, is there a possibility that we're looking at a breakup of Russia? And if so, what, small breakup, large breakup, a couple of places breaking off, or just the entire country going under?
I think some of the peripheral regions might, but I think before we reach that state, we have to pass through the threshold of a very dangerous possibility of nuclear escalation. I mean, to put this in kind of an analogous situation, if somebody breaks into your home and you've yelled at them, you've brandished a knife, but you've got your shotgun in the closet, eventually you're going to get the shotgun out of the closet to make the guy leave, or try to, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're at. The big gun has not been taken out of the closet yet. And that's the whole thing that's been going on. Is we know in the Duma there have been constant demands and pressures against Putin saying, we've got the ultimate weapon. Why are we not using it to resolve this situation? I think Putin, as much as we hate him, is smart enough to realize that doing that, he's lost the war the moment he does that, because that's going to trigger some sort of response, both by the UN and by the NATO and EU, which will completely alter the face of what's going on, and can't help but end with his death. Let's be honest, that's what it will end with, is his death if he does that. But he's under great pressure from his side to take that step. And as all these other little pressures mount up, I think we get into a situation where it's getting riskier and riskier and riskier as his options shrink and the pressures on him build. I think we're entering a very dangerous crisis period right now. So what can he do? What's it going to look like at the end? I don't know. I think we first have to pass through that threshold safely before we can really surmise what kind of end state we're going to be looking at. But yeah, I do think Russia's going to certainly lose certain elements. I suspect that there will be a big shakeup within the Russian regime itself of how it's governed. I'm not saying that we'll end up with, a nice, happy democracy. We could end up with a true, full-blown, North Korean autocracy. That's another possibility that comes out of this. But it's going to change. I don't think it can help but do that, given what's going on right now.
If I could add to this, first thing we should realize is that we should not expect anything from below to change. I mean, from people, from common society, because they will tolerate it for decades, for centuries. Russia went through those hungry 90s. When they had this crisis, as well as here in Ukraine and in Belarus and around all the post-Soviet space. They went through hungry 90s, but they also went through those 70 hungry years living in the Soviet Union.
Yep.
And they will tolerate it
because the Tsarist regimes,
nothing really changed in Russia at all for a century.
Just the color of the underwear worn by the rulers.
But for people, nothing changed at all. They lived on the same level of poverty 100 years ago in villages. Nothing changed at all. So they will easily tolerate it. They will easily continue suffering. They will endure all this crazy crap, of all kinds of crises or some other catastrophes in terms of economy. They don't care. I think if you're talking about elites, yes, some people among the elites may change the situation, and I think that we should expect that. But again, I'm more acquainted with local people, not elites. Unfortunately, I don't know about the gameplay they have there. What we know at this point is that there's a lot of conflict inside of those elites, and they don't like the situation because it's very obvious to me as a Captain Obvious that all the oligarchs that had their businesses outside of Russia had property like villas, like yachts, banks, restaurants, and apartments in London and things like that. They are deprived of having all that, and they don't like it. But do they have guts to change it? Again, it's a different question.
I actually have
the existing system benefits them, so why are they going to want to change it?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people keep hoping that like Navalny will stand up and he will emerge as the leader of an opposition which will enact reforms and everything. People forget who the hell Navalny is. I mean, he's just another oligarch. He may be, a little less harsh than the others, but his whole process of how he got to where he was by exploiting the system and stealing it blind. It's if he comes to power, it's not going to change significantly. You're just changing the faces on the employee of the month board outside the outlet.
There will be let's say they have a democratic Navalny who changed while being in prison. He thought over his life, and he realized that he loves Ukraine with all his heart, and he's almost Ukrainian. He spent like years visiting Ukraine, and he has lots of friends here. He loves Ukraine in a way, in a word. And then he becomes a president, and then he has or a temporary leader, okay, some kind of temporary leader. But he has a whole Russian society, 90% of which supports war in Ukraine because they consider Ukrainians as Übermenschen, as people that don't have right to exist. And then Navalny has to explain them that no, actually, we have to be friends. Like, it doesn't work this way. He will be removed only because of that. Let's face the facts.
Yeah.
Well, and that's interesting because I've recently made a terrible mistake and spent some time on Russian message boards just to sort of see what they were talking about, and I regret that time because, but the general consensus I got actually was that they're blaming the U.S. for this war. And the reason they're blaming the U.S. is because Ukraine, in their view, is obviously the property of Russia. And Ukraine would be accepting Russia with open arms were it not for the U.S. saying this propaganda that you guys can be free and we'll support you and all this other stuff. And they're like, you know, why is America is putting...
If only we hadn't given you Big Macs, you'd be a good, loyal Russian right now, right?
And they're like, the U.S. is putting all of these ideas in the simple Ukrainians' minds, and the Ukrainians, we all know, get confused real easy, and so now we have to clean up this mess, and it was eye-opening, and it was eye-opening to find memes that were well done that say this. What is it? 14.
It's like their main narrative that they're trying to spread among Russian population is that actually Ukrainians love us.
Yes,
they're absolutely crazy about Russians, and they wholeheartedly want to become Russians. They want to abandon their Ukrainian culture and history and genes. And they want to become Russians, like Buryats did, for example, But because there's always this cunning Jewish Yankee from New York who goes. So you want to become Russian? Listen, do you want? Here, I have KFC. Yeah. Did you try it? It's good. It's good for you. Try. And then you go to KFC. You buy some chicken, and then he's like, "Did you try hamburger?"
Here, have some blue jeans.
Like,
listen to the rock and roll music. You'll convert.
Yeah. Did you ever saw jeans? They are so good. And you're like. And simple Ukrainian, as you said, he abandons his Orthodox past, and he, as soon as he's wearing those jeans, he becomes like a gay. Okay, because everybody in the U.S. are gays. So and for some reason, of course, it's like it's a big danger for the humankind.
Yeah.
Because they're fascists, of course. So that's their main narrative. There's like, if anything happens, you have to blame the U.S. And if you blame U.S. in the first place, you have to blame Jews because, like, the U.S. is ruled by this Zionist occupational government who want to dominate the world. And it's so crazy. Actually, even though there is a huge Jewish community in Russia, they are like, I don't know another country that is so much anti-Semitic as Russia.
Well, and to be fair, though, they don't just blame the Jews. They also blame Nazis, which is a Gordian knot, the likes of which I have not been able to untie. Don't think about that too long. You will be in a mental hospital trying to figure out. It's the Jewish Nazis. But I do want to point out and then I have a couple of questions I want to ask you, Commander. We got a super chat, so we'll follow up on, Captain, and then we'll follow up on a few things. But I want to point out sort of how this dovetails, which is, essentially, the logic is, so if you're trying to, and this is actually the underlying logic as best I can tell, all true Ukrainians, recognize that they're actually true Russians, and their leaving the bosom was just kind of a temporary thing, and always understood as they're really still Russian. If you don't recognize this as a Ukrainian, you're not a true Ukrainian, and you're a Nazi, and then you can be killed. So anybody who, for whatever reason, has bought into the propaganda of the U.S. or whatever, they are they're completely the true Ukrainians love Russia. If you don't love Russia, they're going to exterminate you. It turns out that that is 99% of Ukraine right now, and thus a genocide on the grounds that, well, clearly they're not real Russians, not real Ukrainians, because all of them recognize Russia, and they've been, and even blaming the U.S. is an ancillary thing. It's really just, look, you guys left. You are not now, nor ever were legitimate, so we are authorized to, we won't get into the war crimes today, but it's as god-awful, and we should have this discussion at some point, as god-awful as war always is, at least usually there's rules, and there is a rule from the Russian side, and we've heard it enunciated by supporters in Russia, which is do as much damage as you can to Ukrainian civilians so that they leave the country, so that the whole country falls apart, and that's their rule. And that's that we haven't seen that, I don't think, Commander, in modern warfare in any recent time. Even in World War II, other than explicitly what was going on inside of Germany, there were rules, sort of. I mean, we've talked about units that break those rules. It happens. Every country does it, but it wasn't genocide in this sense. Am I wrong about that?
Not entirely. I mean, you have a number of cases like the Serb forces that were not aligned with Tito's movement, the partisan movement, which was a pan-Slavian or Yugoslavian movement. But I'm talking like the Chetniks and the Ostasi and those organizations, where the whole idea was we need to cleanse Serbia and Slavia of all these horrible ethnic minorities that are, causing problems. You see it to some extent going on with the Japanese in, say, Korea or in Taiwan, where they're trying to eliminate people. Yeah. Oh, got it.
So we've got a super chat. Oh yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that, so those kind of movements have existed, and we're just talking World War II. You can go back, and they exist prior to that in other parts of the world. They're just, I think the best way of describing it is they're less efficient about what they're doing. I think that the key difference here, though, is that, and it goes back to where we were joking, just now about, oh, here, try the KFC, try a hamburger. The Russians really did, back in the 60s and 70s, they would outlaw and prosecute people for listening to rock and roll music or for wearing blue jeans, little things like that, because to them, they very seriously believed that those corrupting influences were destroying people's Russianness. It was a disease, it was an infection that needed to be eradicated. And we have difficulty understanding it until we start, I think, thinking back to, some of the weird shit that happens in this country, where, we're going to ban dancing and you can't listen to that evil rock and roll music and that kind of stuff. But it's the way authoritarian minds work, which is that everybody is a good person inside, and it's corrupting influences from the outside that disagree with what our views are, which are causing the problem. So if we eradicate all the corrupting influences, everybody will just naturally become us. And that in turn means you will naturally worship our glorious leader, be it Pol Pot, Kim Jong-un, Putin, you name it.
Trump.
It's some, it's a cult of personality thing. It's
to me,
go ahead.
sorry, Commander. To me, this pan-Slavic idea is absolutely absurd. As a Slavic person, I don't. It's not like I don't understand the pan-Slavic idea. I find it absolutely stupid and crazy, because Russia cannot be a part of pan-Slavic unity. For example, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, for example. Okay, it cannot be part of this pan-Slavic unity because there's like Buryats in Russia, there's Dagestani, Chechen people. They are not Slavic. Also, what, like, if there is a pan-Slavic unity, then why the hell should the center of this unity be in Moscow if it has to be in Kyiv? That's where everything started. Another thing, again, as a Slavic person, I don't understand why we should unite with people who have like my color of eyes, my color of skin. Actually, I don't understand why Slavic people are very different from like French people, for example, or Englishmen. What makes us like different from them? But why should we unite with people with some common background? Okay, if those people are stupid and they don't let us develop. It's like when you meet a guy that you studied with back in school, and he says, "Dude, so I organized a group of people who like crack. So you gotta join us and smoke with us and give us money." You're like why? Like what do you mean why? We studied together back in school we're buds. Okay, like it's crazy, it's absolutely absurd, and it makes no sense why we should unite with people with common background if those people want to kill us. Why we should unite with people with common background if we can unite with people who want to be friends and who want to trade and develop our countries. That's what we should do.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a super chat from level. We've got a super chat from level 70 for 14 Canadian, and it's a very good question, and I think we should address it. It dovetails with the line of questioning I wanted to wrap up with Starsky here, so I'll hold on to that. But that can only be done on overtime. If you want a super chat, I'm sorry, you have to go to overtime. We don't have 1,000 subs yet. Oh, sorry, I said overtime. Even I get confused by the channels. Go to In Time. The link for In Time is in the description. And the problem is that's just the one that's monetized. We're trying to monetize overtime. We have to hit 1,000 subs. So if you're watching this on In Time, and you can go over there and hit the button, we've got the watch hours. We've got everything else we need except for the 1,000 subs. We need to get the 1,000 subs on overtime. And then most of this nonsense can stop. We can focus on other much more interesting nonsense. So apologies for the way that's working. And if you need help, Ahmad can help you get to overtime. Sorry, In Time. Jesus, can help you get to In Time. And all of the donations are going to the Vatra Volunteer Organization. We asked Starsky where he would like donations to go, and that's all the super chats are going there in their entirety. So thank you very much, Level 70. I do know you've done it, and we will get to it. So Starsky, we were talking about nuclear weapons, and I remember distinctly when a bunch of Russian soldiers were found after having been killed. They were found carrying whatever the pens are. It's like adrenaline pens, but it's whatever it is that they, if you're exposed to chemical weapons, presumably gives you a pretty good shot of surviving it. And obviously that's not pleasant when you find that on Russian soldiers. There's one of two reasons: either they really believe their own propaganda regarding Ukrainian manufacturing, or as more likely, they were preparing to deploy it. That is roughly around the time when we know that NATO basically told Putin, and we know this has been confirmed, told Putin, if you deploy nuclear weapons, we are getting involved in one way or another. And we suspect they also included chemical weapons. I have two questions for you. first, knowing that you are fighting an opponent who has made it clear they'd be willing to use both chemical weapons and tactical nuclear weapons under the right circumstances, what was it like for Ukrainian civilians as this started, knowing that that was a possibility? How did that kind of affect them? And has that evolved over time? Is that still something that, you guys talk about at the water cooler, or is that something where you're just not concerned about it? That's the first question. And the second question is, how does it affect you personally?
I talked about it with our radiobiological chemical defense guys from my brigade, and specifically what was found. So Bellingcat reported that high-ranked officers of the Russian army received antidotes that are used in case things like Novichok are used, which is a neuroparalytic chemical weapon. And also what was found, so we found a bunch of, in Soviet times, and of course it's still used by Russians, they had a kit, a special kit for not like measuring, but defining, right? The type of chemical weapon used. There was like a small device that you take some samples of air or water and whatever, and this device will show you what kind of weapon was used, whether it was like irritating chemical weapon or how do you call it? Neuroparalytic.
Neuroparalytic is one word for it, and I'll think of the more commonly used word, or Commander McMillan more likely knows it. It's a neural. It's neural something. Neuroparalytic is one word that that one's older. There's a more modern word for it. I can't think of it. Neuroparalytic, I get. And English is my native language. I can't say it correctly, so you're okay.
Yeah, that's how we call it as well. Whatever. And of course, each kit contained antidote. I don't know whether those antidotes have like expiration date, because
yeah.
The one I saw in my school when we had like civilian defense lesson, I think it was produced in mid-60s and it never, it was never updated. So those were found, basically. And what the guys from our biological radio chemical defense told me, they were concerned about this, of course, but generally I can tell you this: Ukrainians were living next to Chernobyl power plant for more than 30 years already, and we give no shit.
Braver than me. Which actually gets me to another one before I could do the super test that I wanted to say. I have learned something in the last year, which is not to underestimate Ukrainians. I'd say I've learned it, but apparently I haven't learned it. We spoke with you a while back about Bakhmut, and we were looking at Bakhmut, and the situation there was quite grave, as you openly acknowledged. And your assessment was you had spoken to people there, and it was not going to fall. And everybody was looking at the maps and looking what Russia was willing to throw at it. And my first thought was, I will never underestimate a Ukrainian again. But I'm looking at the map, and that was hard to see how it could happen. Yeah, I underestimated Ukrainians again. My current understanding is that it looks like Bakhmut is going to hold, which is probably, in my view, nothing short of a miracle. Commander McMillan would be better to opine on that. But I'm impressed on a level that is I'm kind of speechless. Which, by the way, don't tell my wife because she'll ask you how to bottle that.
Yeah, I told you. I mean, sometimes you have to listen to Captain Obvious, even though what he says is obvious.
No, I think the Bakhmut situation, it was a matter of will, is what it really boils down to. And Ukraine had decided that they were going to hold the place. It was worth holding, and they left their forces to do that. And now, the Russians have, I think, pretty clearly decided, well, that didn't work. Now we have to find some other place on the wall to throw the spaghetti to see if it sticks.
Yeah. So our troops in Bakhmut, they are told, literally, they're told, guys, your task is to kill orcs.
Yep.
As many as possible every day. This is your chance. This is the place where you should do this. And that's what we do. While Russians want to take Bakhmut no matter what, no matter the price, they want Bakhmut because they want to show at least some progress in the past 400 days to the Russian society. That's why it's so important to them. For that reason, I think that they can retaliate on Hostomel, by the way. But their main goal is to take Bakhmut no matter what, sacrifice thousands and thousands of Russians because, like, who cares about them? At the same time, the main task of Ukrainian troops stationed there is to kill orcs, which we do. And we will keep doing it because it's a perfect place and perfect opportunity to eliminate many thousands of orcs.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
that was it. All boiled down to whether they were willing to suffer the cost to achieve that end, and it's very clear that they decided it was worth the cost.
Level 70, 14 Canadian super chat. Gentlemen, do you think there may be a point in the war where Ukraine may, without disclosure, receive nuclear weapons to force an end to the war? I'll start with Starsky on that one.
If there's a point in this war when we can receive nuclear weapons,
I think that's the question. Yes. Presumably under the table, but the thing is, if you have them, it's not like you can deploy them without people noticing.
It's like this. There is a chance we can acquire them if we capture some Russian nuclear submarine docked in Sevastopol, for example, because all the crew of the submarine suddenly felt ill or whatever, had diarrhea, some severe case of diarrhea, and Ukrainian troops managed to capture the submarine, for example, or some Belarusian partisans managed to steal and bring to Ukraine some of Scud launchers from Mozyr. I don't know. Things like that can happen. Other than that, I don't think there is a way for this nuclear weapon to be delivered to Ukraine or used by Ukrainian side. I don't think that nuclear weapon can be used by Ukrainian armed forces, even if we had it, because it's not a purpose of nuclear weapon. It's not built to be used.
Yeah. I think the question needs to be rephrased into two parts. One is acquiring, and the second is using. Acquiring, I can't imagine anybody voluntarily giving the Ukrainians, whether above or below table, nuclear weapons. I just can't see it. with all
Commander,
the
it's
effort.
it's because people outside are not as stupid as Ukrainians back in 1994.
Oh,
Good point.
yeah,
Point.
that's
But
very well put.
yeah, but I mean, the West has been going to huge efforts to, the whole non-proliferation thing of trying to encourage countries, peacefully or threats and cajoling, not to develop nuclear weapons. And in, at least one case that I'm aware of, convinced them to get rid of the ones they had. And I'm not referring to Ukraine. I'm referring to South Africa. To get rid of them, to simplify the equation on not having those dangerous things around. And so I don't see anybody giving them to them voluntarily. Could Ukraine, I hesitate to use the word, but we'll say accidentally acquire some from the Russians? It's entirely possible. We know that the Russians are positioning weapons within close, and I use quotations and marks around that, close proximity to the front. And we know that the Russians are kind of clumsy in how they do business. It's entirely plausible to come up with a scenario where, the Ukrainian forces just accidentally overrun a couple of them. Sure. I don't think they would do so deliberately. It doesn't suit any end, because that leads to the second part of the question, the use of nuclear weapons. Using nuclear weapons by Ukraine doesn't accomplish anything other than put them at the most grievous risk of retaliatory strike.
Mm.
The one thing that's holding Russia from using these on Ukraine is that because Ukraine doesn't have them and hasn't used them, that if they do, they being the Russians, do employ nuclear weapons, the fallout in terms of some sort of reprisal, retaliatory action by the West would be way out of proportion to the success they would achieve by using them against Ukraine. But if Ukraine uses nuclear weapons first, it removes that plausibility. The moment Ukraine employs nuclear weapons, you put the rest in a situation of saying, well, yeah, we're opposed to anybody using nuclear weapons, except for our good buddies, the Ukrainians. So that would never happen either. So it doesn't help the Ukrainians to do it. As Starsky said, a nuclear weapon's greatest potential in military situation is the threat of its use, not the actual use itself.
Actually, Putin already used nuclear weapons. Every time you see Putin threatening the world with nuclear apocalypse, that's exactly how this nuclear weapon is being used.
Yes.
I do want to make one clarification, Commander, because you seem to, be pushing the limits of this. We've discussed this before, and it's very simple. In Time has an upper limit of $5 that we give to the guests. You get $5 for every appearance. Your dogs don't count. I don't care that they're talking. I don't care that they're on air. We're not giving you $5 per dog. $5 for each person in the box, okay? Now, we have talked to Starsky about $5 for Fooch. That's because Fooch is going to get his own channel. He's more popular than all of us combined, and I am not above kissing up future YouTube stars. But it's an exception. So it was very clever that just like Nick won't notice if the dog's on here. Yeah. It's $5, sir. $5. All right. So $2 says. Oh, we've heard him.
Okay. I can get him if you want.
Listen.
You don't even have to pay. It'll be gratis.
I guarantee you, before I finish this sentence, 3 people in the live chat will have said get him on. So get him on, and I'll hit the next I'll get the next super chat. $2 super chat from Sinister Porpoise. Thank you, Sinister, for your continuing support. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much. 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴𝐚𝐬, thank you for that. And then we've got $100 Danish krona, and that one is there he is. Oh my God, it is a gorgeous dog, and it's just looking at us like, what are you doing here? This is interesting. Can I talk about Ukraine? What is Ukraine? I'm sure I can talk about it. Just tell me what it is. All right. By the way, if your dog is talking to you, you probably need help beyond that, which in time can provide. But at any rate, Bjorn Hartmeier, 100 Danish krona. Speculate, please. Oh, sir. Unbridled, unrestrained, and uninformed speculation is our specialty. We would be happy to help you with this. Speculate, please. Will this war end by hard fighting, or by a collapse of Russia, or a compromise of some sort, where Russia keeps Crimea, or something similar? So this is a good question, and it's a difficult one. It requires a lot of speculation and isn't easy. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
You want to go first?
Okay,
Oh, let me. I'm sorry, I have to cut off. There was a fair question. Dog's name, sir. Before we just change it. What are your dogs' names? Well, both of them, but start with that one, please.
Well, I have three actually.
Oh,
so the big guy, who's the one you get to see most often because he's big and actually you can see him. This is Nico. He's a 165-pound Malamute. And then I've got a smaller full Malamute, and that's a female Coco. And hiding outside is the Malamute Husky mix, who's Zuko. We have the full Co in residence.
All right, thank you. So I did interrupt you, Starsky. The question was, speculate, please. Will this war end by hard fighting, by a collapse of Russia, or will there be a compromise where Russia keeps Crimea, the Donbass, or something similar?
There can be absolutely no compromise. 100%. Nobody's going to agree on donating Russia part of the territory that they annexed or occupied. It doesn't work like this. It doesn't work like this in the real life. It doesn't work like this in society when you are being robbed and then you go like, let this man keep my watch. You know, if he promises he will never touch me again. It's bullshit. It's stupid. It doesn't work like this. Ukrainians are against this shit. The only possible thing that I see that can bring this war to a stop is collapse of Russia, and that should be our option number one. Collapse of Russia, or at least change of current regime. I think people, again, when we talk about Russia, we should also consider Russians fighting for democratic Russia, Russians fighting shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainians against Russian invaders. And those people, they also want to live in a democratic Russia. So by the collapse of Russia, we are talking mostly about the collapse of the current regime. And I think that's the only thing that can change things. Maybe I'm trying to pick words because I know that this channel can be demonetized for them.
The channel is demonetized over 80% of our shows, just FYI. And we carry live news. We carry, we've carried riots. We've carried people have died on our air more than once. We're demonetized all the time. That is one reason why I do take care to thank everybody who super chats us because and who likes, subscribes, and shares, because we do not calculate ad revenue and that monetization into our budget. It's not calculated. We assume we will be demonetized every show, and we are most of them. So we prefer you be accurate. Don't worry about the monetization. That's my problem.
That's a bugger. Okay, I think that this manslaughter that we have on the East right now, when hundreds of Russians are being eliminated on the daily basis, eventually it could lead to this situation when the regime can be removed, I think. But we shouldn't count on that. Let's say, realistically, looking at what we have now, Russians brought 400,000 men. Let's imagine they're all eliminated and killed and sent back to Russia in black bags. What Putin can do next? He can mobilize more men and enlist people with disabilities, like 90-year-old man and things like that, and bring like 1 million more, and we will keep fighting them until we are completely exhausted. Okay, and then he brings like 500,000 volunteers from North Korea, because he promised North Korea that he will send some, I don't know, like 𝐒𝐸 and shit like that, to save them from hunger. So we should expect that there will be more and more people coming to Ukraine to fight against Ukrainians, to try to eliminate Ukrainian identity. But our task is to eliminate as much as possible of those men, and return our territories, and build defense along the border, and make sure that Russians will not be able to strike again. The only thing that guarantees that it will not happen again is change of current ruling regime in Russia.
Ender?
Yeah, I was going to. The scenario, the question posited three possibilities, and I think in order of likelihood to ending the war, number one is you have a regime change. You have to have Putin out of the picture. Putin can't end the war. He has to be removed for the war to end. It doesn't mean that the leadership that replace him won't be in a situation where they either continue or renew the war at a later date. It just means that because they have replaced him, they could, if they wanted to, enter into some sort of negotiated settlement to find a way to terminate the war. Putin can't do that. His fate is bound up with success. It's the only way out for him is to win. So I think change of regime is in Moscow is the number one likely outcome here. The number two outcome, and I'm going to have to disagree with Starsky on this, I'm sorry, but I think a negotiated settlement is a possibility. The longer the war goes on, more painful it becomes for the Ukrainians, the greater the likelihood that Ukraine is going to have to accept that at some point you have to say, okay, our people need to stop dying. We need to stop having our homes blown up. How can we give you the absolute minimum we need to get you to stop? It's with the full understanding that if they do that, they're setting themselves up for renewal of the war at a later date, but it gains them at least a temporary reprieve. I know that Zelensky, I know Starsky, I know no Ukrainian wants this to be the end, but there's a possibility that it will. Personally, as I said, I think it's far more likely that Russia will collapse before the Ukrainian the Ukrainian morale gets to the point where they're willing to accept a negotiated settlement. But I think it's a possibility.
May I
Number
interrupt you?
three is the
May I
idea.
interrupt you at this point for 1 second?
Go ahead.
So I want to make crystal clear, because you put it delicately, but I want to put the point on it, which is it actually wouldn't be the ending of the war. It would be on paper, but it would be a pause until they invaded again, which would be basically an absolute certainty. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely.
Okay.
Precisely, because that will set the stage for the Russians thinking, well, we got a little bit this time, so we'll just do it again 10, 15, 20 years downstream, and we'll get the rest.
And it only cost us 500,000 men. That's all.
What's people? We've got lots of people. Who cares?
Oh, dear Lord. Okay. All right.
I still have my yachts and my Swiss chalet. Why should I worry about these things?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know it sounds, I could see Starsky smiling. Yeah, it's comical in the horrible absurdity of the reality of Russian politics. That's exactly the mindset that goes on with those people. The people who are in charge are utterly and completely disconnected from what they're putting their own population through, because all that matters is their own situation.
And the third one?
The third is the military victory, and I don't see the Russians achieving a military victory. You know, we're not going to see Russian tanks rolling through Kyiv. But similarly, let's be honest, we're not going to see Ukrainian tanks rolling through Moscow. I don't see a military solution here. It has to be one of the other two. And given the preponderance of losses and what I've seen to date from the will of the respective nations, I think it will end up being a Russian collapse before we see a Ukrainian amelioration of position to allowing a negotiated settlement. So there's my 2 cents for not even worth 2 cents.
And don't sell yourself short. I hate it when you do that. We've agreed it's worth at least $5. I'm glad you gentlemen know my sense of humor, because there are people who don't. Nick is so mean to his guests. No, he's joking. When Nick gets more and more serious, when he gets more serious, that's what, and I was like, you know what, my humor is too dry, so I softened up the previous one, because I was like, you guys will get it, but everyone else will be like, wow, Nick's an ass. And I may still be, but just not in this one instance. All right. Let's wrap up a couple things. I want to find out if you gentlemen have anything final you want to say. I'm going to remind everybody, and this was, Starsky had mentioned this, we're demonetized like 90% of our shows. In fact, they see what we put in the title. I swear to God, we're demonetized before we go live. We prep these shows sometimes a couple days or even a week in advance, and it's demonetized before it started. They're like, oh, Nick's at it again. And we're very proud of our content. It is adult content. It's we talk about some pretty difficult things. Yeah, not that kind of get your mind out of the, dude, we're trying to be professional here. Wow. But if you have any singles, I've been looking for some. But at any rate, that's a conversation for another time. Can we clip that? I have to talk to our producer. I maybe shouldn't have said that. We play hard. We have fun. We're a serious channel, and the second I use the word genocide, which I've already used today, we were demonetized. They literally during the stream it picks up that I used that word, and it's demonetized. YouTube, the biggest content creators, I shit you not, people opening boxes, the unboxing videos by a 14-year-old, I think a couple of years ago. We did a show on this. The single biggest YouTube content creator earned $34 million, and he was 14 years old, and all it was unboxing. So, and they're pushing that because that's safe material. They're not going to get sued by the FCC or anyone else. I do get it. So it's a struggle, and we do the best we can. I like to think that we bring very good guests, so we're certainly very fortunate to have both of you. That's why I have to sit here and say, please, consider becoming a member, become a patron, and if not, just like, subscribe, and share the content. If you like it, share it with a friend, get the word out. I was thinking earlier, because we were talking about Shinzo Abe, and we were live with the assassination of Shinzo Abe before any Western media organization. We were live with what's been happening in Israel before any Western media organization. That's CNN, Fox, ABC, and we do that pretty consistently. All of us here are very proud of that. We think we're a channel that is worth consideration. So please think about becoming a member, supporting us, becoming a patron, and at a minimum, if you can like, subscribe, share, it helps us out. It's free. And join overtime, because that is the only way we're going to be able to kill the Restream bot, which is really starting to get on my nerves. So thank you all for putting up with that. Any final words that anybody wanted to do? I'll start with you, Commander. Any final thoughts before we head out?
The only thing I would say is I don't anticipate a lot of excitement in the next couple of weeks, but I think, as I've said before, once the ground dries out enough, I think we're going to see some pretty dramatic activity on the Ukrainian front.
That is one of the things. It's like, okay, the Ukrainians, and I love that last feint, and we've talked about that, where they're like, oh, we're going to attack, and I forget whether it was Bakhmut or whatever, but they're like, we're going to attack, and then boom, they just end up like everywhere else except that area, and the Russians are like, they lied to us. But anyways, I know. I wouldn't make too many predictions about what Ukraine's going to do, because I wouldn't want to tip off the Russians, but quite frankly, I think even experts are sitting there going like, you don't know, it's going to be crafty. But the word has gotten out.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be exactly like every bad scene in every bad cop movie of, hey, your shoe's untied, huh? Bob. It's literally going to be that clumsy when it happens.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so everybody, and I've even, like I said, I was on these Russian forums, and they're like, oh, Ukraine is planning a counteroffensive. And that's when they all actually start to get quiet. They're like, what do you think they're going to do? And they're like, fucking fine, no. And it's actually kind of fun to watch. But it's sort of like, I think everybody's figured out that something's going to happen. Ukraine's a little ticked off right now, so something's going to happen. It's the question of what. And I like surprises, so we'll find out. But I think that's I think everybody's agreed that somewhere in April we're going to see a dramatic escalation in activity. All right, well, thank you, Commander. It was a delight as always. Operator Starsky, any final thoughts before we go?
Yes. I just wanted to add something to our previous conversation, that the Russians will not expect where we're gonna strike. That's why I will not tell you that Ukrainian armed forces are preparing to strike in village Velika Pizdivatka on July 1st, 12 a.m.
Starsky, your shoe's untied.
Oh,
yeah. So guys, first of all, thank you so much for being invited to your channel, and I would like to call all our viewers to subscribe to this channel, to In Time and Overtime, and eventually to the Playtime that will be that will be launched eventually in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Here in Ukraine, we love you because you are awesome.
On behalf of everyone here at In Time, it is our privilege and honor to do what we can. And as you had said earlier, and I believe it, and I failed to mention it earlier, but Ukraine really is at the front line of a force that is wanting to wash over at least half of Europe, if not the whole planet, and is now at the front of what's, other smaller sects of parts of Russia that want to be free, and none of that's possible without Ukrainians taking the brunt of all of it. And that's a shit position to be in, and it's because that's the way it fell. But Ukraine is doing a service, I believe, to absolutely everybody, and it's a genuine pleasure to watch the courage and inventiveness, and it's a genuine pleasure to watch how Ukraine is dealing with it, and the grace. So thank you very much, Starsky, for coming. All right. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you. We will. Our next scheduled show is on Tuesday. Mr. Scott Kelly Ernest, former white nationalist and a self-described hate speech enthusiast, whose job it was, he said, to encourage hate speech and to radicalize hate, will be on to discuss what got him out and his present work. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you then. And Starsky, we will see you in 1 week, and I'll talk to you briefly after. So you stick around anyway, but just wanted to remind you, and we'll catch up in a second. But thank you all, and we will see you next week.